Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, peace be unto you. Welcome to 2 Samuel chapter 5. There are 25 verses. In verse 2 it says leader versus captain. I think leader is just a stronger position, in my opinion. Represents something greater. Verse 3, a covenant versus a league that David made with notice the elders. He actually made a covenant with those who represented the people. In a previous video, I had discussed that why would David make a covenant with the people? He was the one over them. He's the one who has authority over them. But no, he still had to make a covenant with the elders, who are the leaders, essentially, of the people. You could say the sub-leaders. Verse 6, a big difference here. It says that David was not able to enter. Actually, it doesn't say this, but these are my thoughts. David was not able to enter. Why? Because the blind and the lame withstood him. They were the gatekeepers, preventing him from entering. In the Masoretic, it says that except you take away the blind and the lame, only then will you enter, essentially. So one is saying you have to kill the blind and the lame to enter in order to enter. The other one is saying that the blind and the lame were acting as the gatekeepers. But David was not a cruel man, or not, or was he? And then we see here saying this versus thinking it. Verse 8, a big difference. It says, David commanded those to attack who? Those who hate the soul of David. So these are the ones preventing him to enter. The Jebusites, specifically the lame and the blind. And possibly it could be referring to the lame and the blind who hate him, or an additional group that includes additional people who hate his soul, David's soul. What does the Masoretic say? It says that David hated the lame and the blind, which I don't agree with, because David is not a cruel man. Okay? He doesn't hate blind and lame people. Now we have an omission of house of Adonai, or Yah. So that was omitted, of Yah. An addition of whoever gets up to the gutter. That's in verse 8. So does David hate the lame and the blind? Remember, David is not a cruel man. Just going to emphasize that. There's an addition of he shall be chief and captain, whoever kills those lame and blind. Verse 9, hold versus fort, citadel versus Millo, and his own house. So David built his own house versus inward, which is very vague, can mean so many different things. Verse 16, an omission of 13 different children, respective children of Dawid. I'm going to name them because they're significant. Samai, Yesibath, Nathan, Galaman, Yabar, Thesus, Eliphelet. Tends to name a lot of his kids that. Naged, Nafek, Yonatan, which seems to be someone named after his best friend, Yonatan, Yehonathan, Leah Samis, Baalimath, and another Eliphelet. Verse 18, the Philistines assembled, so they gathered together, versus they spread themselves, so they spread out. And where did they assemble? In the valley of the giants, versus Rephaim. So it's a valley in both, but one's of the giants, one's Rephaim. Verse 20, upper breaches versus Baal Perazim. And then again, it does say over breaches instead of upper breaches. And then Baal Perazim. And then it says how Adonai destroyed the hostile Philistines versus Adonai is broken forth upon mine enemies. Verse 21, This is a big difference. Notice that David and his men, they took the Elohim of the Philistines. They didn't do as the Masoretic said and burn them. Why? Well, I'm speculating, but they were probably made of precious material such as gold. So they reasoned perhaps that they could use this towards the worship of the real Elohim by burning the gold and using it for another purpose, for a holy purpose, not for the false Elohim. Okay, verse 23, it says, turn from them. Adonai instructing David, turn from them, and you shall meet them near the place of weeping. So he's saying don't go up to meet them, but turn from them, change destinations, change course, essentially, and you meet them. You shall meet them near the place of weeping. What does the Masoretic say? It says, fetch a compass, which essentially means turn around. So turn around behind them. So you're going to go behind them, which is kind of not just counterintuitive, but contradictory, because he's not supposed to meet them, but going behind them means he's going to have to pass by them and come upon them over against the mulberry trees. So not a place of weeping, but mulberry trees place. And then 24 is a interesting difference. It talks about you're going to hear a sound of a clashing together from where? From the grove of weeping. So when you hear that sound coming from that place, then you are to essentially ambush them. He's going to go down to them and fight them. And what does the Masoretic say? It says, when you hear the sound of a going, which essentially it means the marching, when you hear the sound of marching in the upper part of the mulberry trees. So this is a little ridiculous because these are not Ewoks. They're not monkeys who live in trees. These are men, soldiers, who do not climb trees. They don't live in the trees. So it doesn't make any sense. It makes more sense that it's not the tops of mulberry trees, but it's in a grove of weeping. And then David will hear that sound of a clashing together, possibly the sound of armor as they're marching. Okay, and significant difference, it says here, go down to them versus bestir yourself. Bestir yourself means determine or decide. So think about it, it's emotional, it's internal, whereas go down to them is an action, it's external. Taking action versus just thinking. Significant difference again, it says, Adonai shall go forth before you to do what? To make havoc in the battle. So he's going to be the one to cause havoc in the battle. The Masoretic, Adonai himself is the one killing the host of the Philistines. So David, you don't have to do anything. I'll do everything for you. But that is not what happened. Verse 25 contradicts verse 24 in the Masoretic anyway, because it says here, David did so, and David smote the Philistines. So David is the one who did the killing. Yes, Adonai caused havoc and created those circumstances, the conditions where David would be victorious, but he had to do the killing himself. But in the Masoretic, it's Adonai doing the killing, which I don't believe makes sense unless you take this comma to mean it's a separate thought. So Adonai will go out before you and then you will smite it, but you'd have to be using mental gymnastics, to be honest. Okay, so that's all for this chapter. Thank you very much for your time. Until next time, look at chapter 6 of 2 Samuel. And until then, I bid you all Shabbat Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum. Peace be unto you, and Maranatha.